What we're going to do right here is go back.
Back to when all of this started. In 1971, President Nixon declared a war on drugs. Once policymakers realized the war on drugs was failing, the Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984, which was put into law by President Reagan, led to an almost immediate spike in nonviolent drug arrests and the highest incarceration rates in our country's history. This policy of punishment and over-incarceration has led us to become the second most incarcerated nation on the planet, with 707 per 100,000 people locked up. That's right, we have more people locked away in cages than any other advanced nation. Russia comes in a not-so-close second with 463 per 100,000. But let's not be disappointed with second place. We're number one when it comes to total prison population, with an estimated 2.23 million people. And that's just in prison. To get the whole picture, we still have to take into account county and state jails, those serving their time in communities, including those in the probation and parole system. This brings the number to over 6.8 million people in the adult correction system. With roughly 5% of the world's population, the U.S. makes up over 22% of the world's prison population. As of 2012, the U.S. prison system was comprised of 93% males and 7% females. African Americans and Hispanics make up a combined 58% of the total prison population, while African Americans and Hispanics make up only 25% of the total U.S. population. There are more African Americans locked up today than there were slaves in the 1800s. 1 in every 15 African American men and 1 in every 36 Hispanic men are incarcerated in comparison to 1 in every 106 white men. If these rates continue, 1 in 3 black males and 1 in 6 Hispanic males can expect to be incarcerated during their lifetime. So clearly, prison is a growing industry. For businesses to grow, there needs to be a valuable commodity, aka the prisoners in this example. But there also needs to be money coming in for these businesses to thrive. And thrive it has. Since 1970, the prison population has increased by over 700%. $70 billion out of nearly $200 billion budget for public safety is spent on prisons annually. The number of privately owned and operated for-profit prisons from 1990 through 2010 grew by 1,600%. 50% of undocumented immigrants are housed in privately owned facilities. Private prisons are federally backed by contracts, publicly traded, and are for-profit businesses. Some private prison companies, such as GEO Group and Corrections Corporation of America, aka the CCA, have contracts with the federal government that mandate an average of 90% facility occupancy. This means that if the private facility was to have their population fall below the 90% mark, the federal government would have to pay a fine for the unfilled beds. Guess where that money is going to come from? Yep, you guessed right, taxes. The same taxes that could be used to uplift our suffering school systems, to fairly and justly compensate our educators, to create more positive social and health programs, or to help offset the high cost for education are getting pumped right into the machine known as for-profit prisons. The money machine doesn't stop there, though. Inmates are used to serve as a cheap labor force. If you can buy it, there's a good chance it could be made in prison. From shower curtains to military uniforms to dentures, prisoners are being forced to perform tasks that they are more than likely not trained to do. Inmates are forced to work jobs for wages that range anywhere from 93 cents to just over $4.73 per day. Companies such as Whole Foods, McDonald's, Walmart, Victoria's Secret, Aramark, AT&T, BP, and more use prisons as their means of saving money on labor, which helps to blow profits. But the catch is that this practice drives down the wages in the rest of the economy and puts taxpayers on the hook for the tax incentives worth millions for the bigger businesses involved. But hey, at least it was made in the USA. It's easy for a convict to get a job in prison or jail, but when they are released from prison, it's virtually impossible to find work. They are also ineligible for student loans, food stamps, public housing, have been detached from society, making it intentionally harder to move past the institutional mindset. Because of the lack of support when a convict is released, there is increasingly high recidivism, homelessness, and suicide rates. But it gets deeper than just the numbers. Some of the policymakers who can influence the much needed change for our prison population are receiving money from private prisons in the form of campaign donations. GEO and Corrections Corporation of America and their associates have funneled more than $10 million to candidates since 1989 and have spent nearly $25 million on lobbying efforts. Taking into consideration all of the facts discussed, the obvious question is, how can this be fixed? Well, for starters, eliminate the war on drugs. It has been a 40-year-plus failed experiment. Based on the stats, this was never a war on drugs. It was against people. Drug use has not gone down, and we are destroying an already flawed and unstable economic system with more useless spending. Stop putting the emphasis on punishment. It's not working. Put more resources into drug and alcohol treatment and rehabilitation. This will reduce the amount of recidivism and promote better health for those with drug and alcohol dependencies. Not every drug addict is a criminal. However, every drug addict is an addict and should be provided the necessary treatment. Eventually, most of the people locked up today will be released. So bring back some of the programs the private prison system cut out for cost savings, such as education, trade and skill development, mentorship programs, and better physical and mental health care. Stop allowing political candidates to perpetuate the expansion of privatization by turning a blind eye to the donations they receive for campaigning and lobby efforts. These are the same organizations and people that influenced the increase of mandatory minimum sentences, helped to pass California's three-strike policy, and supported Arizona's highly controversial anti-illegal immigration policies. All of the policies mentioned were created after the rise of the private prison industry and served to keep the bottom line in the billions annually by deliberately incarcerating the most vulnerable populations of people. These are still people. These are families being torn apart, children going motherless and fatherless, people being forced into servitude, parents who have to talk to their children from the other side of the glass. We can no longer allow this issue to go unnoticed. We can no longer afford for the story of the voiceless to go unheard, nor can we continue to ignore the real problems happening in our neighborhoods. These are our brothers and sisters, and we should be their keeper.